Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another episode of the Not So Global Show with your friend and host, Prof.ZAK. Today's show is really special in terms of the fact that I have a very honorable and special guest with me on the show today, an old friend by the name of James Crawley. He is currently serving in a very important position in the United States, and he has lots of insightful information about the admissions process overseas, specifically in the United States of America. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Jim on board, and I'm going to allow him the opportunity to introduce himself. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the Not So Global Show. Why don't you introduce yourself, and for the benefit of the viewership, tell us what you do.
It's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and to your viewers. My name is Jim Crawley. I'm the Director of Global Recruitment at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. And I've been in international student recruiting for 25 years, going back to my start at Central Michigan University, where I was honored to be the International Student Advisor for you when you were a student there. And that was an awesome experience for all of us. I have worked at Central Michigan University, at Grand Valley State University, at Alma College, where I actually got my bachelor's degree. When I was at Central, I got my master's degree there in educational administration. And then now I also worked for a company called ELS Language Centers. So I was the director of university relations for them. And I've been with Hope College for about a year and a half. I handle all the recruitment and admission for the university in terms of international. So I travel to really all over the world when I'm able to. Obviously, this year has been very different for everybody, but hopefully very soon I'll be back out there recruiting again. And so I work with the students from the point of inquiry all the way through till the point that they actually enroll at the college. That's what I'm up to, and I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'm really happy to have you on the show, Jim. And it's interesting you mentioned Central because we go way back, and Central is my alma mater, and it's very close to my heart. And the experience at Central Michigan University has made me the person I am today. And the International Admissions Office over there, the Office of International Admissions, has a large role to play in facilitating all the international students like myself. And the commendable job that people like yourself can continue to do and in facilitating international students like myself. So that's very commendable. Jim, tell us a little bit about Hope College. Is it like a four-year university? I mean, is it a university? Is it a college? Is it a four-year college? Tell us a little bit about Hope College.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that when you mentioned college versus university, that's something that maybe sometimes there's a misconception overseas that there is some difference between a college and a university. And most traditionally, if the name of the school has college or university in it, it really doesn't make a difference. The only exception would be if normally if the name has community college in it. That's a 2-year school that only offers associate degrees. There are a few 2-year schools that have dropped the community word, but and they still only offer 2-year degrees. But generally speaking, schools like Hope College are 4-year schools. They're offering bachelor's degrees, as we are. The major difference that a lot of times you'll find out, and this is just a general statement because there are exceptions, but many cases a college will only offer bachelor's degrees, whereas a university will offer advanced degrees or master's or doctorate degrees. There are some exceptions. There certainly are some colleges out there that do have some graduate programs. But if you look generally across the U.S., like Hope College, we offer 50 academic programs, well, over 50. And the strengths of our programs lie in the STEM areas, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as psychology, business, and even the performing arts are exceptionally strong. So We are a liberal arts college. We're also a Christian college. Now, that doesn't mean that only Christian students go to Hope College. It just means that's kind of how we were founded. And many private colleges in the U.S. were founded originally from one church or another. They were kind of founded with a religious background, but they don't necessarily keep that. They keep the affiliation, but they don't necessarily keep the very strong, maybe even sometimes strict guidelines that maybe would have been there when they started. For example, at Hope College, we do have chapel services. Like many schools have chapel services and church services on their campus. We do have chapel, but it's not required. So students who are Christian, and it's non-denominational, but students that want to go to chapel can go to chapel. Students that don't want to go don't have to go. So, and there are local, let's say that you're of some other religious faith. There are local churches too that many students will go off campus and go to their own church. So, and some students come to Hope and they don't have a religious preference, or they don't have anything that's religious that's strong in their life, and that's okay too. We're a very open school to all students. But we do want to provide that support to students who do want to have faith be part of their college experience. But the main reason students come to Hope is the strength of the academics by far. The research is phenomenal. So students are getting an experience here much like, well, better than in some cases than they might receive at a bigger school, because sometimes bigger schools, they do have the graduate programs. And so graduate programs, graduate students, although they're doing an awesome and incredible job there for the graduate students, they kind of dominate some of the research, for example. Whereas if you have only undergraduate students like Hope does, then all the research is done by undergraduates. So that's an advantage. So that's a little bit, just very briefly, about Hope, and it's kind of the type of university it is, or type of college.
So does Hope College, Jim, does Hope College have a very large international student community?
Yeah, so our overall campus is about 3,000 students, again, undergraduate only, and we're at about 75 international students. So we have a lot of room to grow, and that's primarily why they hired me, was to come in. What I've done traditionally in the past is gone into schools and started the international recruitment program. I did that at Central Michigan and at Grand Valley State. And now, although Hope was doing it to some degree, there was not like a concerted effort, like a plan in place. And so I'm instituting more of a strategic plan for recruitment. And we hope to be at 150 international students. We really feel that that's quite possible. That would be 5% of our population. I think it's very doable, even in today's challenging times. I think we can do that. It's just a matter of, being very consistent with the plan, being very responsive to students, which I feel that I'm very good at, and being very upfront with them in the process about what it takes to, get into Hope College. And I think that's what's important when students are looking at U.S. colleges and universities, is really understanding, what the requirements are, and understanding what their chances are of getting admitted, and having a plan in place for, okay, if I don't get into school A, then I'm going to look at school B, and having a plan in place for that school as well, because you never know what's going to happen through the admissions process.
So how easy or how hard would it be to secure admission at a college in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think it totally depends. That's a great question, by the way. And I think it totally depends on the school itself and the qualifications of the student. So, for example, when you look at the Ivy League schools, which lots of students and families think, oh, my child, or the students thinking, I'm going to go to an Ivy League school, or I want to go to an Ivy League school. But I think it's important to recognize that although that may be a great option for certain types of students, it's not right for everybody. It's just like Hope College is not right for everybody. It's all about making the right choice and the right match for you as a student. So an Ivy League school, or what would be considered a highly selective school, they would have an acceptance rate of anywhere between 8 and 14%. So think about that, 8 and 14%. That's a very small number of students that apply that are actually getting admitted. And then an even smaller number than that that actually enroll. Doesn't mean a student shouldn't try, but I think that they have to recognize that all the applicants to a school, an Ivy League school or a highly selective school, all the applicants are going to be high quality, very high quality students. So to have a all A's or top grades, top marks on your transcript, that's the norm. That's what they get for almost all of their applicants. So it's when it comes down to a highly selective school, it isn't just your grades. You have to have the solid grades, the very actually exceptional grades, but you have to have a lot of other things too. You have to have the leadership and the volunteer work, and the involvement and the exceptional essays, because it really gets down to the nitty gritty, gets down to the details when you're trying to get into a highly selective school. Hope College is considered a very selective, not highly, but very selective school. So we're kind of one notch below in selectivity, which makes sense. The other part I should note about highly selective, one of the reasons that they are that way is they only have so many seats to fill. So when you only have so many students that you can admit, that increases that difficulty of getting in, because they're having to be more selective because they can only admit, let's say, 500 students or something like that. Hope being very selective, we look for, well, first of all, I should say the average GPA, and obviously the grades might be different the grading system might be different depending what school a student goes to in Pakistan, but our average freshman coming in is a 3.8 out of 4. So, I mean, they're a very high quality student, but yet we will consider down to like a 3.25 or just above a B average for consideration. But I would say consistently, even my international applicants are all applying with very high grades. But the grades are that's probably the most important component. But you also have the language ability, so the English language ability. So international students, as part of applying to the U.S., not only have to provide their secondary school transcripts, as well as if they have attended any university courses, they would have to submit that transcript as well, or have the university send us one. But there's also the English proficiency. So we accept the TOEFL test, which is the most universally known English test, the TOEFL, TOEFL. Or there's the IELTS test, which is the British-based test, IELTS. Or there is a new one on the market called Duolingo. And Duolingo is less expensive and is done at home. And we do accept that as well. So there are really 3 ways of meeting English proficiency. And then there may be other requirements that schools have, like we are test optional, or really it's just not required. SAT, ACT is not required for international students at Hope. But other schools do require it, or maybe just for this year during COVID, they're going test optional temporarily. We just simply don't require it of international. And then recommendation letters is optional for us as well, although we do encourage them. They are optional. So that only leaves one other item, and that's the verification of financial support, which is kind of a totally different kind of question, but it's still related to the requirements for application to the U.S., because you do have to show that you have financial support to be able to go through the admissions process. It's just one of the requirements at schools, and it's not a school requirement, it's a U.S. immigration requirement, because we can't issue like an immigration document for your visa unless we know and we verify that you have financial support to come to the university.
Right.
So
Jim, let me ask you, what would a student applying from Pakistan, for example, what would they be looking at in terms of like annual cost for attending Hope College? Like, is it very expensive or is it affordable?
Yeah, I think the objective that we have on the university side in the U.S. is we try to make it affordable, because sticker price, what you might say is the total cost right off the top, is expensive. So what we try to do with scholarship is, if we can, bring it down to be affordable, not free. I wish it could be that way, but affordable. So Hope College the total yearly cost at Hope College is $51,000 US without any kind of scholarship. We don't even have US students that pay that. Everybody at Hope is getting some kind of scholarship or loan or some kind of aid. Now, it's important to note that U.S. students qualify typically for a different type of aid than international students. Usually there's two different categories at the university. So that's why we always ask students, in the application process, what type of student you are, so we know what categories you fall into. For Hope College, we consider admitted international students, so those that apply and are admissible, we consider them for up to $25,000 in scholarship. So that brings our total cost down to, for the coming year, to about $26,000. So still, I recognize, still very expensive, but really half the cost of what the overall cost really is to attend Hope College. And that $26,000 would include room, board, tuition fees, books and supplies, and mandatory health insurance. So the only thing it doesn't cover is transportation and personal expenses.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Tell us about finding on-campus employment. Is it
Yep.
easy for an international student to find work on the campus?
Yep, another great question. And so the student would ultimately come over on a student visa, which is an F1 student visa. And under that status, students can work on campus up to 20 hours a week maximum. And again, that's on campus only. So yes, at Hope College, jobs are available. It could be, in the grounds crew. It could be in the cafeteria. It could be with an individual office. Like even in admissions, we hire international students for tour guides and for other activities. Departments will hire international students for, again, different work that the department requires, or laboratories on campus also hire. So, there's a number of jobs on campus that students could apply for. And again, that's up to 20 hours a week. And this is across the US. This is not just Hope College. 20 hours a week while classes are in session, and up to 40 hours a week during vacation times. So right now, during this holiday, we're in our holiday period right now. International students who have stayed on campus, if they have a job that does operate during vacation time, so sometimes grounds crew or even some of the offices that are still open, they would be able to work up to 40 hours or full time during this break time or during the summer. We also, for example, at Hope, we run a research period of time in the summer, and we hire in 250 students that are in the STEM fields to do research, to do paid research on campus. So that's a month-long paid research experience. So that's another thing that we do in the summertime that is not only pays the student but gives them an incredible experience on their resume. So that's the work. Now you mentioned on campus, and that's what you can do just automatically as an F1 student. Off-campus employment is a possibility, but it would be through things like internships. So when a student in their major wants to do an internship, there's a process of applying for that permission. It doesn't cost anything. It's a rather simple procedure, but you do have to have a job offer or an internship offer, and then you can go through that process of getting that approved. And then finally, international students are permitted to work for a year after they graduate. And that's another permission they apply for, but that can be a job anywhere in the US. It's just got to be a job in their field of study. So there's a number of different work possibilities, but I think one thing's important for the students to note, that on-campus employment is not going to make you enough money to pay your bills at the university. It's really just going to make you enough money to pay your like personal expenses, like you want to buy a pair of jeans, or you want to go to the movies, or you want to go to a concert, or you want to buy some snack food for your room. That's the kind of money you're going to make. 20 hours a week is, at minimum wage, although it may seem like a lot of money, is not really a lot when you're considering the things you might want to do with it. But summer earnings, if you stay for the summer, you could make enough to help for the next year, maybe.
Great. And speaking of minimum wage, just for the benefit of the viewership, what is minimum wage these days?
Yeah, we're in that $9 to $10 range per hour,
Okay.
depending on the job. Again, sometimes with an internship, it'll be more than that, but the on-campus employment while you're in class, that 20 hours per week, that's going to be a minimum wage job most traditionally. The internships or the postgraduate work, that could be at anything. That could be a salary. It could be probably going to be a higher hourly wage though, if you're doing, that kind of work.
And what about the optional practical training route if a student chooses to take that route after graduation?
Yep. So that's a process that the college, the advisor, international student advisor at the college you go to will start talking to students about that in their final year. So the sessions, they'll run information sessions or have handouts or some form of dissemination of information, usually in the semester. Like, for example, if they're going to graduate in the spring in May, they would start talking to them in the fall about the process. And then the actual application process starts 3 months, can start up to 3 months prior to graduation. So if you're graduating in April or May, you're going to start the process in the end of January, beginning of February. And there is a fee. It's about a $400, $450 fee to apply for that, and quite a bit of paperwork. And that gets sent into the Immigration Service. And if approved, which most of them are approved, you get kind of an ID card, and it gives you permission to be employed basically for a year. You can work, but you have to work in a job related to your field, and you have to report back to the college that you went to as to what job you're working in and what the title is. And because occasionally immigration does kind of audit records, and they have to see that you are working in your field of study or related to your field of study. Now, it's important to note, too, that with STEM fields, so science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, you can apply for a STEM extension of your OPT. So you can actually work now up to 3 years if you're in a STEM major, but only a STEM major. So a business major could not do that, but an engineering major could. So after a year, within that first year, they can apply for extension for 2 more years.
Okay, thank you, Jim. I had a question about living on campus. So does an incoming college student in the US, is there like a requirement that they have to live on campus, or can they find and seek off-campus housing?
I think that's, again, you're asking some great questions. And I think it depends on the type of school and the requirements of that school. So a community college, which is the 2-year option we talked about earlier, community colleges traditionally do not have housing. Some of them do, a very, very small number do, but traditionally they do not. And so if you were to come and attend a community college for the first 2 years, then you would be finding outside housing. And typically they would have a list of housing that's available, and you'd have to go out and look for it when you get there, which can be challenging, I think, for a student who's fresh out of high school. I think and those are the ones that would be going to community college traditionally. So I think that can be a bit of a challenge, but if the International Student Office is very helpful and maybe has a list of apartments that regularly house international students, then that can kind of solve that problem. For 4-year schools like Hope College, we do have a residency requirement. We're a residential campus, so our students come to Hope knowing that they're going to be living at Hope. So we have a residential requirement of 3 out of 4 years. Now, with some of our scholarships, some of our larger international awards, that requires living there the whole 4 years. So 1 additional year beyond the normal requirement. And the reason for that is, since we're discounting tuition so much by giving the scholarship, our main income that we get is from room and board. So if we let people live off campus, we're really not bringing much of anything in off that student. On top of that, and probably more importantly, we're losing that cultural involvement that the student has while they're on campus. And we learn just as much from the student as they learn from us. So I think it's very important that the student is on campus. And also, I think the other thing to consider is sometimes it's not cheaper to live off campus. It depends on the community. Some communities have a very high cost of living, so the apartments are pretty expensive. So, and when you live on campus, everything is included. All of your food, all of your utilities, water and garbage and electricity and your cable TV. I mean, everything's included. So you'd have to, when you're off campus, you have to pay for all of those individually. And so sometimes it's more expensive. And that's the case with Holland, with our town, because we're a tourist town. It's a little expensive to live in town.
Okay, great. Jim, I had a question about the current situation
Mhm.
with COVID and how it has affected student life. And in fact, not just student life, but how it has affected the admissions process. So if a Pakistani student was interested in, let's say, applying for admission to the US, how much of a factor is the current situation with COVID? Should they apply? Should they postpone their decision? How much of a factor is this COVID situation?
Yeah. No, it's a very difficult situation for many people around the world, and so I think everybody is trying to adapt as best they can in their procedures to make it. I wouldn't say, in a sense, easier for students, but maybe more convenient is a better word. In other words, many of the schools have gone test optional for SAT, so that's to accommodate for test dates not being available. Um, Cost wise, I wouldn't say there's been too much of a change, other than some schools, if they had to go totally online, some schools made an adjustment to their costs, maybe if they did everything online. We did not ever go totally online, other than right at the very end of the semester, just for exams. So we were in person all semester. And I'll talk about how we were able to do that in a minute. But the other way that we've decided to help a little bit is that we have frozen our costs from this year to next year. So U.S. colleges normally go up in cost about 3% a year. That's pretty normal to go up 3%, or an average of 3%. But we've frozen we don't have any increases for next year. So that's assisting, especially the current students who know that they won't have increased costs for next year. Um, I think that for admissions purposes, it's difficult because we're not out there, we're not overseas, meeting with students at college fairs and meeting with families. So that's not only a challenge for us, but it's a challenge for them, for the students and their families who, they're looking for that contact. They're looking for that person that they can connect with from the campus, and ultimately trust that person, because especially if the parents, they're sending their child over to, study in this university thousands of miles away. And so that connection is pretty important. That person-to-person contact is a very crucial part of the process. And unfortunately, we haven't had that over the last year, and we probably won't have it till, hopefully we'll have it next fall, in the fall of 21, but that's really hard to say at this point. So the way Hope College was able to stay in session, and what we hope to continue to do, is that we do pre-arrival testing, COVID testing. So everybody that they have a test before they arrive, they have to test negative immediately before arrival. And then what we do when they arrive is we also do wastewater testing. So all of our buildings are kind of in clusters. So these three buildings, the wastewater goes to one location, and et cetera. So we do testing to identify elevated levels of bacteria. And so we're kind of a leader in that department. I mean, not many schools are doing that. And what we've been able to do is identify when there's the beginnings of a problem. So we've been able to catch cases very early before they become an outbreak. So up until the very end, we were only averaging about 5 cases a week. And then
That's
we were
pretty good.
immediately putting the students in isolation. We have a hotel on campus, a hotel and convention center kind of thing, a small one on campus. And so the hotel became our kind of quarantine area. So we would put them in their own room in the hotel, which was probably nicer than their dorm room. So they probably weren't too disappointed about the setting for that. And then they order food online, we deliver it to the room, but they do stay quarantined in that room for 2 weeks. Now they do their classes online. So, and they have a TV in there. I mean, it's just like a hotel room. It is a hotel room. So it's a little isolating. It's tough. It's hard on the students, but I think it's the only way to kind of contain it is if you just do your quarantine period. Just as if you were at home and you were exposed to it, you should do a quarantine period too. So we quarantine those that test positive as well as close contacts, so that we make sure we were trying to kind of cut it off at the pass, make sure it does not become an epidemic on campus. And we did that very well. And that's our goal again for the next semester. We're going to delay our opening, and then other colleges have done that too. This fall, many colleges started early and they ended early. So we wanted to end before the Christmas, before the Thanksgiving, our Thanksgiving, which is a holiday the end of November. We ended before that, because many kids would have gone home for Thanksgiving and then they come back to campus and you don't know what they're bringing back to campus. So we ended with exams before Thanksgiving. And now we're starting the second semester late on purpose. We're going to start the end of January so that we give that time period after the holidays for, if students do contract something, they have time to get through being sick and then be able to arrive on campus. So those are many of the changes that I think U.S. colleges are making, is adjustments to price, sometimes adjustments to testing, and the adjustment to their calendar to try to do what makes sense for the safety of the students.
Great. So Jim, when does the semester when does the fall semester for next year, when does that start?
Yeah, we don't know for sure right now because of COVID again, but typically it starts with orientation the third week of August.
The third week of August?
Yep, and then we do a 1-week international orientation, and traditionally we have also done a parent orientation during that week. So if a parent wanted to fly with their student to Grand Rapids and then we pick them up, bring them to Hope College, we did a week of parent orientation too. Again, we did not do it this fall because of COVID, but I'm hoping as soon as we're able to, we're gonna do that parent orientation again too. So generally speaking, the application deadlines do vary from school to school. The highly selective ones have very, very early deadlines, like some have already passed or they're coming up very quickly after the first of the year. But many of us, the competitive or highly competitive or very competitive schools, they're probably going to accept applications through till April or May. Our deadline is really May 1st, unless we fill up. I mean, we could fill up before then, but it's probably unlikely, especially everything considered in the current times. I doubt that we will close admissions early, but so generally it's May 1 to have everything in. I encourage sooner than that because I do make quick decisions and I do issue immigration admissions packets starting in February to admitted students. So those that are admitted early get their packet early and they can start making their visa interviews 120 days prior to their arrival. So April, they can conceivably start making visa appointments for the next fall.
Awesome. Well, Jim, finally, I just wanted to ask you, for the benefit of the viewership, if there's any undergraduate students watching and they want to consider applying to Hope College, is there a website or some contact information that you want to share for those potential students?
Yeah, and I know we've given a lot of factual and a lot of maybe even sometimes a little bit boring information because there's so many procedural things that have to happen with applying and things like that. I think it's important to note too the activities and the involvement that students have in a college experience. So looking for, those things that you enjoy doing as a student. So if you enjoy performing arts or fine arts, look for the ability to do that. It doesn't mean you have to major in it. You can just do it because you enjoy doing it. Or there might, whether it's in being involved in the dance program, the theater, or the music, or you yourselves, Zishan, you were involved in the international night.
Yes.
And you actually got a chance to MC the international night. So that's a unique opportunity. See, I remember that was a long time ago for you to remember that. But if you remember that night, there was just so much talent on that stage of the international students. And so even if it's not directly being, in a dance troupe or being in a theater production, there's going to be these other experiences where you can do things that you enjoy. And I think that's part of the U.S. college experience, is really enjoying what you're doing. Now, the studying is the most important. You're going to get a degree, right? But it's the other experiences that make you unique. and also the work on campus that we talked about, and the internships and the research. Adding those things to your resume is going to make you look different than everybody else that comes out with a college degree. You need to have something extra to really get those prime opportunities in the job force. So, and now I totally forgot the question you originally asked me, Zach.
Contact information for somebody that's looking to
Yeah,
apply for,
contact. Yeah, definitely.
like a website or
We want to make sure you know about. Yep. The best ways are the website, which is www.hope.edu. So just the name of our school, hope.edu. And then also YouTube. We have our own channel on YouTube, as many schools do, but there's some great videos on YouTube. There's an aerial drone tour through campus, so you can see the buildings. There, you can go in different categories of academics or sports or fine arts and look up a lot of different videos. You can, for email, I would say the general email to the university or the college will end up getting forwarded to me once you indicate that you're international, and that's admissions with an S, admissions@hope.edu. So that's an easy one. So that's the best way to contact us and to contact me. And then as you apply or inquire further information, if we end up going on to WhatsApp or Zoom, we can make those contacts at a later time. But that gives you a great way to contact Hope College itself.
excellent. Well, Jim, I'd like to thank you wholeheartedly for being on the show today. And because I'm a student counselor here in Pakistan myself, so I facilitate students with admission overseas. If I have any inquiries or if I have any viewership that, inquire about admission for a college, I will definitely try and link them up with you. And once again, I really appreciate your time today. And I just want to thank you for giving us all the valuable information that you shared with us today. So thank you once again.
Yep. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I'm happy to come back at any point and do any kind of general seminars that might help your students. Any topics of interest about the college process, just contact me. I'm happy to help.
Excellent. Jim, thank you so much and have yourself a fabulous day. Stay safe and take care of yourself. We'll be in touch.
Thanks. You take care as well. Happy holidays to everybody.
Happy holidays.